Hey everybody, welcome to Moore's Link Podcast. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to go off the ramp, off the something. I don't know, off the ramp, off the normal.
Usually off the ramp.
I don't know.
We're always off the ramp.
So I don't know how this came up, but I was talking about, we're going to talk about some hobgoblins. Anyway, I happen to be looking at a lot of YouTube and the industry. Like, there's a lot of stuff I watch from different areas, and I'm watching a lot of stuff from like a lot of podcasts, a lot of wars going on, a lot of thought processes, a lot of things.
A lot of internal wars.
Yeah, a lot of internal wars and how things should be. Now, the D&D now I don't recognize as what I played as. So it's a lot of happiness, and I don't know. It's fine.
Wow, was it like the 40K universe back then?
Yeah, it was grim. It was dark. I was watching something on what was the guy's name? I'm going to kill it. It's Merle something. But he was talking about an artist. I can't even remember the name, and I'm going to bring it up because it's, I don't want to get into that bad. But he was talking about how the art is different now than it was then. And now it's back then it was grim and
it was like borderline Lamentations.
Yeah, are we going to survive? Yes, you got the Lamentations, like we're not going to make it out of here. But if you do, it's a lot of fun. Or like now to me, I even noticed it. It was like a lot of the art now is like another guy compared it to Dr. Seuss, but I'm not going to. But it made me laugh because I'm like, yeah, it is kind of colorful and cheery, which I never viewed D&D as, because you're, once again, going back, you have an evil villain that you're gonna, for some reason, you're an adventurer and you're there to save the world. So, but I was thinking about it because I happened to be flipping through the book and just flipping through these articles, and it made me think back to there's a creature called the Hobgoblin in the what do you think of when I say Hobgoblin? What is your knowledge of a Hobgoblin?
I just think of like a goblin, tiny goblin, maybe like 4 feet, with very ill intent.
Yeah, pretty much goblins, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know hobgoblins are English? They were created in England, Ireland, and all that good stuff. But I can't give you a history of it. I looked it up. Go look it up. It's interesting. But basically, the hobgoblin variety. Most goblins were either were the mythical creatures, but they were they would be helpful in the olden days, or they would be mischievous if they didn't like you, but they were they would prank you, but they would prank you in a bad way.
Like death.
Yeah, you could really get
oh,
all
you're
messed
dead.
up.
Haha.
But they were always small creatures. But one, the hobgoblin made me laugh. They're like, oh yeah, they'd iron your clothes or clean your kitchen if you left them out clothes or cream or something. I'm like, well, I need one of those, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's what they started. But then somewhere along the lines, I think it was it referenced in Tolkien. I think he references hobgoblins as larger, more aggressive goblins.
Above 4 feet?
Oh yeah, like 6 feet, man-sized.
Whoa.
Yeah, like regular. So
Man goblin?
man goblin. But goblins aren't nice if you think about it. Like goblins, those creatures like that, they're like the fairy folk. They were never really nice. The happiness, in literature, like Shakespeare, the only one I can think of that would be famous is from Midnight Summer's Dream. Shakespeare, the one Puck, the one fairy in there. He's supposed to be a hobgoblin, shape changer. Anyway, so that's what it would be. But somewhere along the lines, Tolkien made them so they were bigger, badder goblins or orcs or whatnot. But in the D&D world, in the first edition, they turned out to be man-sized goblins, but they showed up as they're kind of a bad creature. For whatever reason, I was drawn to it and this is how I got to it, because in the original, and I remember I was talking about it to, I think, John, and he says, oh yeah, the Asian or Oriental featured. I go, no, they weren't. But then I looked at the old picture, and I'm like, yeah, the artist kind of represented them with almost like samurai gear on, and I think they kind of took it a little bit, but they're not really from that. I don't know where that came from. Maybe just an artist interpretation. I don't know. If somebody knows, let me know. But they took, and I always thought these were underrated creatures, because goblins are goblins. They're terrible. They're nasty. They're gross, and they just come in and swarm. I don't know why they became cute, because they're just terrible, right? And then hobgoblins are the bigger guys, And in the D&D in the first edition, I'll send you some pictures like how they were represented. But they were lawful evil. They were pretty strong, and they always had armor. They were represented, always have plate mail armor on, and organized and warriors in combat. And the reason I was drawn to them is because they reminded me of like a true mercenary, like a military type mercenary. Like you'd have like, what are those guys from Russia? That Russian military group,
Soviets.
Yeah,
they're
like they're in the news. They're in Ukraine and everything. But anyway, I can't think of what they're called. They're like Wagner, not the Wagner group. That's us. Anyway, that's it's another group, but they're these Russian military mercenaries. Well, that's what I kind of like. Okay, that's probably what they would be like. But they're lawful evil, so that means they would be, they'd still have rank and file and contracts and everything like that, and they would be good for like mercenaries. So the reason I used them, and this is a good idea, and I always thought they were great, and the way they were represented, and they kind of like fluffed them off. But this is like, you're talking like an organized army. Like if you had to hire somebody, hey, I need an army and I need them hired and I need them to go do this. Well, they're evil, so they don't really care what they do, I guess. They're lawful, so they wouldn't break a contract or else they wouldn't get another contract back. I mean, you can look into this. But anyway, the point is, like, at one point I had a group of players, and I can't remember who they were. They wanted to introduce firearms, like basic firearms into D&D, which I'm fine with, So I'm like, man, that kind of changes the game, though. So what kind of villain do I come up with that? Or what kind of issue do I give them to, like, counteract? Because they can't, they'd run around with guns. I'm not talking 6 shooters, I'm talking like, like black powder load, the beginning of the firearms. Because there was rules for that in the first edition.
No Glock 19s.
No, none of that stuff. None of that happy stuff. So, but they were still running around with these guns, and it was kind of like overpowered, especially if somebody didn't have any. So I'm like, well, what can I do here? Well, the villain hired a group of, I'm like, okay, I came up with this whole Hobgoblin mercenary squad who their choice of weapons was firearms too. So they would have the swords, the shields, and the glass, but they would also have like units of guys with firearms, rifles, pistols, and stuff like that. So then when these guys showed up with their pistols, all of a sudden these mercenary groups would show up and they would have like in Hobgoblins and they'd have like also pistols. So now you're like, oh, okay, you wanted to have a gun battle? Here we go. Now it's not one-sided. And I'm like, well, I developed these guys pretty good. I had a whole backstory to them, and I had the name and who was in charge. You can build this whole like unit of, and they were pretty good villains because they're pretty relentless. They're organized. They fulfill a purpose, and they're not easy to kill. Like Hobgoblins have pretty high armor class, higher than most player characters do, especially at that level, because they're like a good 2 to 3, second or third level villain. Fourth. Adversary. But you get a group of them together, you get a army, or you even get a battalion, or you even get a simple platoon of them. I mean, they'll become a challenge for higher level adventurers, especially if they're organized, or they're defending a place, or they're assaulting a place. That's another thing. But you could also work with them, like, oh, okay, hey guys, because they're lawful, maybe they negotiate. That's another aspect of the role playing. Like, hey, we got to negotiate with these guys. Maybe see if they can't turn them against the other guy. You know what I'm saying? Because they're just, it's money at that point. That's another adventuring, or say you're a good group of adventurers and you need a quick army to, maybe you got to go talk to these guys. How many movies are there where you got to go talk to the bad guys to get them to help you out in some good adventure, good venture, they're just there for the loot, or whatever, so I thought it was a pretty good adventure. So if you're looking for some, and I guess that comes back to what I've seen in the new edition, and I've had some complaints of what they were talking about. I think what the original thing was, a lot of people like take a lot of the new, the way the D&D is going with a lot of the adventures or the villains or the classic evil monsters aren't being used. They've changed the face of it. Like I said, I don't agree with a lot of what they do, but if people enjoy it, if that's what they want to play, that's fine. But if you want something different, or you want to go back to the old way, like, hey, I really just need a villain, a bad guy, So I think Hobgoblins would be a pretty good starting point, especially for low level. And then go from there.
Hobgoblins with the Glock 19.
I don't know if I mean, they would be good. And I mean, and you put them like in a Shadowrun setting, man. That'd be, like a futuristic setting or
Oh
a
yeah,
shadow.
like a Planescape where they travel through time.
Yeah,
and
you know what I'm saying,
different,
Planescape or something like that.
different
Yeah,
like.
because it's an arms, you know, like any
Yeah,
villain.
because you could use Planescape to do that Shadowrun type vibe if you wanted to. So.
I mean, it's for game balance too, but you could even put them in a futuristic setting,
like a whole campaign out of those guys. Right?
Yeah, yeah. You could, and it would be it wouldn't be the high adventure. You'd actually be like dealing with almost like a tactical version of it. And it's
Okay.
like, you know, it's still high adventure. Obviously, it's hobgoblins; they're not real. So, but yeah, give your guys up, and after that, I always use them. In many campaigns, I always try to incorporate that type of these units that I enjoyed because it was a good villain. And I'm trying to think what you can think of. Well, have you seen Lord of the Rings, the movies?
No.
Ugh, never mind then.
Bits and pieces.
Well, there's a guy in there that's kind of like the commander. He would be a hobgoblin in my opinion. And yeah, the orc commander. And then I can't think, what other movies would you have seen or any writings or anything like?
Not the Green Goblin.
No, not the Green Goblin. That's not even close. Man, I can't think of something that it would be, but I mean, I think it's.
No, I just gotta get more cultured.
No, I don't think you gotta get more cultured. I think just gotta be more nerdy. But if you like this, and that's just my suggestion. That's my opinion. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Look into Hobgoblins.
Look into hobgoblins, guys.
I might.
I mean,
might have
these
to.
are concerns I had. These are the big concern I had for like.
This
This
is
is what happens when you in the middle of the night. You're like, what am I going to talk about? If you like what you hear and you like what you see, go ahead and give us a subscribe. We'd appreciate it. It helps us out, it makes us more popular,
does.
and helps
Cool
us
kids.
decide what direction we want to go in.
Yeah. Cool
And
kids.
you can also sign up with.
A join button. I think it's only desktop still, which sucks. I don't know. You got to get it figured out. Mobile. I don't know why you can't join on mobile, but we put the link below in the description. You can join 3-tier subscription system. You get videos before everybody else. You get Immortals Inc. gear every month, depending on your subscription tier. And it also goes right back into this room. Think of it like Patreon built into YouTube. It's really cool. So we're pretty grateful to get to that point and keep pushing.
All right, guys. Thanks, and till next time.